Our topic is business models, and as Anna has already explained, we are now talking about Value Links 2.0, a new version of our methodology, and one of the new modules, or maybe even the only real new module, is this one, business models. We did not look into business models before, but now we do, because we find that this is a very important concept for value chain development. And in my first chapter, I will try to give an answer on the question why we need to look at business models, what's behind it, and what is its use. Then in the second chapter, a few tools. Basically, there are two main fields of analysis. One is the business model canvas, and the other one is a series of financial analysis tools. Of course, we cannot go very deeply into those tools, but at least how they can be applied, what they are, in an overview mode, I would like to explain. And then we have the two cases Anna already mentioned. One is Atieke, that is processed cassava, and the other one is white rice in Nigeria, where we can then have a look at how that works in practice. And then coming back to a conclusion on what to do with this and how to utilize that, relatively new concept, I would think, within GIZ. Not new in an absolute sense, but new in a sense that we have not been using it in GIZ very systematically in the past. So why do we need to look at business models? First of all, I would like to make the connection with our value chain development framework. I suppose that all of you have been working with value chains already, and so I don't have to explain the concept. It is clear that we are looking at an industry that includes all the operators, all the enterprises that together serve a particular market, so that in an industry you find types of categories of enterprises, operators, as we say in value links. And the idea is that we can say for every category of enterprise that makes up the industry, that there is a business model behind, either implicitly or explicitly. Explicitly, if the entrepreneur can really say in detail what he is doing and how he is doing, or implicitly because he may not have really thought about it and still be doing business, but not yet with a very systematic approach. But nevertheless, everyone who is active in markets will have to respond to a number of questions. What are you producing? How are you producing? We are coming to this. So the value chain as a whole can be decomposed into business models of specific types of operators who follow a similar business model. If we talk about farmers or we talk about processors, then of course it's not necessarily individual companies, it is categories that share a particular business model. Now, when we talk about value chain development, we talk about economic upgrading, technological change, we talk about new business linkages, marketing channels, different aspects. Value chain development in that sense always implies improving the business models of those operators who together constitute the value chain. Whenever they seek to innovate technology, become more productive, make new, better products, develop new markets or marketing channels, all the time you have to look at your business model and think about what that means in terms of doing business and how you organize yourself. So there is the connection. It is the industry value chain at large, and then there are operators within it. Now, of course, the question is, what is a business model and what's the definition? A very generic definition at the top of this slide, saying that a business model is a specific combination of product sold, markets, the internal operations within the company, technology, the supply and marketing links that an enterprise uses to succeed and grow, and thus the rationale of how an individual firm creates, captures, and delivers value. That sounds more theoretical, of course, but as you can see, this is, if you like, the value chain in one company. The whole idea of a business. Elements include, therefore, the product. What is that company making? Customers, scale of production, type of enterprise, its size, its localization, the technology it uses, backward linkages to suppliers, and marketing channels. Now, that is still in generic terms, and the question is how you can create a picture that would connect these different elements as we understand them to be part of a system, and that will be one of the tools, the business model canvas that we are going to use to put those different elements into one system. Before I get to that point, let me, in the introduction, say a few words about why would we use the business model approach? What is it? What is its value for value chain development? And I think there are 4 points. We think that value chain development programs use the business model approach, first of all, because it constitutes a solution. So we would, as value chain development programs, help developing improved business models, of course, in cooperation with the enterprises, and especially for small and medium enterprises. They need to improve their business to become more competitive, and of course, that is what we need to succeed as a value chain at large. Then if we have a different kind of doing business, a new or improved or changed business model, the next question is, can it be replicated? So become part of a strategy, really. And then value chain development programs would support the replication of such an improved small-scale business model wherever possible and useful. And that restriction that I'm introducing here, wherever possible and useful, has to do, of course, with the fact that not every business model can be replicated, and there are, of course, limits to be looked at. And we are coming to that point in the very last chapter, again, when we talk about the limitations. And then there is a third point, and I think that's also a very essential one. Besides developing new or improved business models, we also have to look at the other solutions that value chain development programs work for. Say, linkages, service provision, financing, and other topics are all value chain development topics and solutions for the value chain. And we have to check them to make sure that they are also attractive for individual enterprises and operators. Sometimes, in our own understanding of what makes a business linkage solution, we may not be understanding the financial implications well enough. So it is important also to understand the economics of enterprises to be sure that a service solution, a linkage solution, any marketing solution that we work on outside the individual company would be, in fact, attractive enough for them to join in. And then, of course, there's, and this is my 4th point, that famous topic, inclusive business models. There are many definitions. We are not going into details of what exactly constitutes an inclusive business model here, but what is important is that even by supporting a large company, a bigger firm, we can also create a social benefit. So if we work in a public-private partnership, public-private development partnership mode, very often we work with bigger companies, developing together with them an inclusive business model that includes small holders, small suppliers, and other small partners of that bigger enterprise. And the social benefit is created through that cooperation. So it's also applied to bigger companies. That's my introduction, why we need to look at business models, the connection with value chains, and the importance of an economic, financial look at individual companies and types of operators, types of enterprises for our strategy. Now comes my 2nd chapter, and I think that one I will still follow through on the key tools. And when I presented the definition, you remember there are a number of elements that constitute a business model, and the tool to organize that information and to really make sure that the different elements are connected in a systemic fashion, we use the business model canvas. And This is a tool that organizes the information on an enterprise. It is a framework to describe and visualize the overall business strategy. It helps us to understand what determines costs and revenues. So if you have a particular product, then of course it will be an important question to know what the production cost is. And it summarizes the results of the financial analysis, although it does not contain the tools for financial analysis as such. It is just a framework. Now, that business model canvas has not been invented by GIZ. There is a source that is quoted on the bottom of this slide, and we can only recommend to look at the original literature. In the meantime, there are 3 or 4 books that explain the business model canvas in detail. We are only now starting to utilize it, but it has already been gained importance, I should think, in development work. So it's really up and coming, if I should say, as a tool. Now, how does it look like? I first start with the simplified version of it. You see a summary of the different elements that I quoted earlier. In the middle is the product, and that is something that the business model canvas has in common with the value chain, where we also start with the product. But here it is the value proposition of a particular type of enterprise. So we are not talking about the product of the value chain, we are talking about the product of the enterprise that is in the center. And then we have on the left the partners, the suppliers, the different activities, business activities, technical production activities that are needed to create that product. And on the right side, the distribution channel, the customers, and the customer relations. So it's a backward look and a forward look to see how the product is generated and then from the enterprise following on through the market. And of course, production will cost money, so we have a cost structure that relates to the product and to the business activities, and we have a revenue stream from the market that comes from customers and pays obviously the company, and both the combination give us a profit or loss. That's the simplified structure, just to show the philosophy, the logic of a business model canvas. On the next slide, you see the complete business model canvas format. It is a similar, or it's the same structure, but a bit more differentiated. You still have the value proposition in the middle, and then the backward linkage is more differentiated. It talks about partners, it talks about activities, it talks about resources. So here you find the elements of a business model that we need to understand. What are the resources used? What kind of capital or technical equipment is in place? How is it used? So what kind of technical and other activities? Who are the partners supplying those capital assets and inputs and raw materials? So that's the backward linkage. We then come to the value proposition. That means the product, the value delivered to customers. And then again, on the market end, it's more differentiated because it talks about customer segments, it talks about the channels, how we reach those customers, and the customer relationship, the type of relationship, meaning contractual relationships with those who buy the product. That is the value proposition. That's the complete format, and what you find in that format, which I've simply copied from the literature, is a number of questions that help us filling in those boxes. Now, you can see that the business model canvas format has also information on cost and revenue. It puts in just some information, some data, and these data have to be obtained first, of course. We have to calculate them, and that leaves us with the task to doing some financial analysis of business models, understanding the numbers, if I may say so. So a financial analysis is required to assess the financial implications and the financial viability of the business models. And what we would do is we would first have to look at the current situation. So if you describe a business model as it is now, with the business model canvas, then understand the numbers as they are now. How much is being sold? What does it cost? The accounting numbers, so to say. And then how would that change? And the change is a financial change because we want to earn more money, more revenue, maybe lower cost. And at the same time, that will translate back into a new business model canvas. So we have always a current and an improved or a developed state of business model evolution. So now what does the financial analysis comprise? I think there are two big topics that we have to look into. One is the profitability of the business model. First of all, we would want to know, is an improvement really leading to more money in the pocket? And that would be a key criterion. If we improve the value chain and we want people to participate, then that needs to be more profit. And that includes, well, basically two types of calculation, a cost of production calculation and the revenue or profit and loss calculation or anticipation. If it is the current situation, then we have to know, does the business model make money now? And if you improve it, how much more money would it make if you go for it? Now, if you improve the business model, then most of the times, not always, but in almost every case, we'll have to invest into it, and that means there are capital requirements, both long-term and short-term. There is investment needed in assets, in equipment, and we are going to see the two examples who have invested in equipment, but also into raw material, because if you expand production, you also need money to pay for the inputs. That leads us to a liquidity question, cash flow. Can an enterprise that is investing generate enough cash from its operations that the business is stable? That is another aspect of financial analysis. Of course, there are many more, but I think for our purposes, this is what we have to look for if we want to understand the business model more completely. Now, what makes a better business model? I already said the most important thing is financial viability. We have seen quite a number of cases, I think, in development practice where we have been supporting directly or through our strategies business models that have not been financially viable, that only survive if they get subsidies. So here is a key point. We have to make sure that the value chain development strategy and the individual companies included are economically safe and that they are really providing a benefit. And then at the same time, and this is the public view that we have as GIZ, as German government funding this, from the public point of view, an improved business model also would have to create social benefits, jobs, decent jobs, probably improve resource efficiency, avoid polluting the environment, etc. Because these are finally the things that we pay money for, that we invest money, public money for, tax money for. So there's finally the three sustainability dimensions included, as we have always said, would be necessary for value chain development at large. We have to satisfy the economic necessities, but the justification for funding comes from the social and environmental benefits. And that includes then, of course, working on the business models, and if it is new products, working on the value propositions. If it is more capacity of production, greater volumes of production, more efficient technology, it is key resources into which one would invest. Key activities have to do with the form, production, and marketing are organized. So every type of innovation translates into a change of the business model canvas. If you do the financial analysis and we know that business model can make money and it will need some maybe additional funding, I think what we have to do in our analysis is checking for critical conditions and parameters. And that has to do with the fact that the business model is a system. So if you utilize a particular technology, it means you have to utilize it at capacity, utilizing the full capacity or most of that capacity to actually benefit from the cost advantage. If you bring a new product to market, you have to make sure that you really have the customers and that the business channels, the marketing channels are in place. So in fact, if you change one element in the business model, the others will also have to change. It is a systemic change. It always goes together. And therefore, if you just look at the profitability and don't look for the conditions under which that profitability would be achieved, we may still not have the right picture. We have to look for those critical conditions. The most critical parameters are those where the difference between the current and the improved business model are the largest. For example, there is a minimum volume of products made and sold, a production scale that we have to look for. What is the scale change? If we are moving from a small scale to a medium scale operation, then that scale change is a major shift in capacity, production capacity, and therefore we have to make sure that that is feasible. A shift in production capacity, more production will involve a higher volume of raw material, maybe more workers, and then again you can ask yourself, are those raw materials available? Can we find those workers that have the requisite qualification? What about the technical efficiency ratios? We always have to find out how much we get out of our raw materials, transformation, how much loss would be created. That can be a very critical factor. If we don't reach certain efficiency ratios, the profitability may not be achieved. And of course, the ability of an enterprise to repay loans when it has to finance the investment with bank money through external loans.